Today we're looking at the importance of the imperfect tense. So verb tenses give us a sense of the aspect in time of different verbs. So the imperfect tense describes an action sometime in the past that was continual at some time in the past. We don't know for how long, we don't know when it began or when it ended, but the important part is sometime in the past there was an action that was continual, and as opposed to the simple past. And let's talk about an English example. If I were to say to you, we were fishing last Tuesday afternoon, we know that at a point in the past, last Tuesday afternoon, there was something happening that was ongoing. What was that something? We were fishing. The were implies process or an ongoing nature. If it were simple past, in the Greek what would be the aorist tense, we would just say, we fished last Tuesday afternoon. What did you do last week? Last Tuesday we fished. Was it a long-term thing, a short-term thing? It doesn't emphasize that, it just states the fact of it. So the simple past just states the fact of what happened. We fished last Tuesday. The imperfect tense implies an ongoing process. We were fishing last Tuesday afternoon. So it's very useful, this imperfect tense, to communicate a nuance about something that happened in the past, something that was being described. In English Bible translations, you will frequently see that the imperfect is translated as though it were a simple past. And that's not a bad thing. It's just not fully communicating the nuance that the biblical writer included in his text. And so we're going to see clear examples of that today, where knowing the verb tense helps us gain a little deeper insight into what the writer was saying. So we're going to see 5 examples. We're going to move pretty quickly. So buckle up and let's dive right in with Galatians chapter 4, verse 22. First the ESV, and then we're going to look at a phrase in Greek. For it is written that Abraham had 2 sons, one by a slave woman and one by a free woman. So the phrase in question is Abraham had 2 sons, and that is Abraham duo huios esken. So Abraham, duo 2 huios, sons plural, esken, was having. So literally this says Abraham was having 2 sons. In English, that's awkward, isn't it? Abraham was having 2 sons? What do you mean? Well, Abraham's no longer alive, and nor are his sons. He's no longer having 2 sons. So Paul's not simply describing a historical fact about how many sons Abraham had. He wants us to understand, or he wants to evoke the circumstances surrounding the birth and the life of those 2 sons. 2 very different situations, with Hagar the slave woman and his wife Sarah, and these 2 sons who are in conflict and the disruption in the family, one being a child of physical efforts and the other being the child of a promise from God, and all that entails, because that's at the heart of the analogy that Paul is making in Galatians chapter 4. So if he just said Abraham had 2 sons, that's just a factoid, right? Abraham had 2 sons. But if he says Abraham was having 2 sons, and then I have to think about all the circumstances surrounding that, his advanced age, the sense that the promise wasn't being fulfilled, the taking the situation into hand with the slave woman, the conflicts that arose from that, the disruption to the family, the generations of conflict between the offspring of Ishmael and the offspring of Isaac, all these things coming together are invoked or evoked by the notion that Abraham was having process 2 sons. The nuance of the imperfect tense. Let's carry on and look at Mark chapter 9, verses 30 and 31. They went on from there and passed through Galilee, and he did not want anyone to know, For he was teaching Edidasken, his disciples, saying, Elegan, to them, the Son of Man is going to be delivered into the hands of men, and they will kill him. And when he is killed, after 3 days he will rise. So we have two related imperfect tense verbs here. Edidasken, he was teaching, and elegan, he was saying. Why use the imperfect tense here? Because he didn't just say these things once. This was an ongoing part of his teaching program with his disciples. He was instructing them and building into them this understanding of what was going to happen to him. If Mark simply said, he taught them and said to them, that doesn't communicate that notion. That just tells us, as a matter of fact, they had been alerted to this. By using the imperfect tense, we understand that this was an ongoing part of Jesus' teaching of his disciples about his own future and how it would affect them and what would come after. Okay, let's march on. Acts chapter 2, verses 46 and 47. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added prosetithi to their number day by day those who were being saved. So prosetithi is our imperfect tense verb, and literally it's the Lord was adding day by day to their number those who were being saved. So the nuance here is that it was a continual adding. It's not at the end of a period of time a block of people were added. As they were continually living this way day by day and communicating their message day by day, the Lord was continually adding day by day to their numbers those who were responding to their message and joining the fellowship. See the importance of that continual aspect of the imperfect tense verb. This was an ongoing thing that happened during that time period. Next up, Romans chapter 6, verse 17. But thanks be to God that you who were once slaves, ete douloi, of sin, have become obedient from the heart to the standard of teaching to which you were committed. So ete here is an imperfect, indicative, second person plural form of the verb to be, of eimi, to be. So this is a stative verb. This is telling you about someone's being, of their status. And so he says here, you were being, ete, douloi, slaves. This was in the past, prior to their conversion, prior to their coming to faith. They were in an ongoing status. Their condition was being slaves. But then when they came to faith, they went through a change and were emancipated, liberated, set free from this slavery to sin, and became different new creations. Their status changed. No longer ete douloi, no longer were they being slaves in this period in the past. Great stuff. One more we're going to look at, and it's called a conative imperfect. It describes an attempt to do something, and in conative imperfects, that attempt is almost always fruitless. Like it doesn't work out, okay? So this is in Luke chapter 1, verses 59 and 60. It revolves around the dedication of the baby John the Baptist. All right, so it says, and on the 8th day they came to circumcise the child, and they would have called Ekalun him Zechariah after his father, but his mother answered, no, he shall be called John. So Ekalun is literally, they were calling him, the baby, Zechariah, after his father. Now the baby hasn't been officially named yet, right? But everyone's assumption, their working assumption, that this late born in the couple's life baby is going to almost certainly be named after his father, Zechariah. So in their minds, their assumption is, their working assumption is that the baby's name will be Zechariah. But when they get there, his mother, Elizabeth, says, no, we're calling him John, Ioannes, Jonah. So we're not naming him after his father. This particular baby, this miraculous child born to a barren mother, is going to be called Ioannes, Jonah, after the prophet who brings the message of salvation just before judgment to Nineveh. Right? So pretty great stuff there. So this is not a name change. He hasn't been named yet. They were attempting to call him Zechariah. They were assuming he would be called Zechariah. But then at the ceremony, his mom breaks in and says, no, 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 we're calling him John. So their attempt is thwarted, conative imperfect. They weren't attempting to force the name or anything like that. It was just the working assumption based on traditions. A late-born male child surely will be named after his father. But no, we're calling him John. So notice the power of the imperfect. The imperfect tells us about what? An ongoing action that happened prior to now. It's not always the same as to when it started or when it ended or how long the duration was, but it speaks to us of an ongoing process or status or situation that was in the past and is almost surely no longer present. Right? It's not what's happening now, it's what was happening then. We were fishing then versus we just fished then. We were slaves then, but we're not slaves now. Right? People were assuming that the baby would be called Zechariah, but then at the ceremony they learned, no, that's not the case. He will be called John. So many great things, so much nuance packed in there. It's worthwhile to look it up and see which verb tense was chosen, because a lot of translations treat it like it was an aorist, like it was a simple past, but you'll miss the nuance. You'll miss the richness, the flavor that the writer was giving us when he chose to use the imperfect tense. Thanks for watching. I hope that was good for you, and I hope there was some value in that for you. If there was, leave me some feedback in the comments. Tell a friend, share the video, hit the little notification dinger, hit like. All that stuff helps the algorithm of YouTube tell other people that the channel exists. Thanks again, and until next time, Charis Kairene Humin, grace and peace to you.